As Matt mentioned, we're in a critical time for our U.S.-Canada trade relationship, and a number of you are involved in our input to the United States-Canada-Mexico agreement review. And both countries, all three countries, have opened up a comment period, and we're going to learn more about this here in the next session. We had a webinar last week to talk about it, and we're encouraging our partners to send us comments. We're collecting input. Also, we encourage you to share whatever you're sending into Global Affairs Canada and the USTR so we can amplify your message as a region on both sides of the border. So we can share that link where to send those to us, and you can send them to myself or also at info@penwar.org. And we have a survey link we can share as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce our moderator for the next session. Sophorn Cheang is the Director of Business Oregon, and she leads the statewide effort to support businesses, advance equity, and drive economic growth. With a background in finance, public service, and community development, she brings a deep commitment to inclusive and innovative economic strategy for the state of Oregon. So please join me in welcoming Sophorn.
I don't know. I think that I have, I can be on a podium since I have paper and, good morning, everyone. Good morning. I know we have a small room, but then there's quite a number of people online as well. So you all probably have seen that, this panel is a little bit different. So you only have me as an in-person. So you'll be staring at me here up on the stage. And I could see that I'm missing Bruce over there because of the column. So we're covered. I could not see him. Well, I know that we're going to get started. First of all, I just want to say, Brendan, thank you for the kind introduction. Matt, thank you for bringing the team and also host the forum here in Portland and also in Oregon. For those of you who are new to our city and our state, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time. Thank you for coming to Oregon. We have a really nice week to welcome you. Even though it's cold, we start the fall, the color is changing, but it's a beautiful day. And I really hope that you will enjoy the rest of the day. Being able to also check out some of our city as well, as Senator Frederick mentioned. We have a lot to offer. Again, it is my great honor to and pleasure to facilitate this important conversation. I know that this is not new to many of you because this conversation has been an ongoing conversation. For those of us who actually been doing trade and working to promote that economic development and also business opportunity wherever you are, I'm sure that this is very important. We have two amazing people who are actually joining us online today. I do have a little bit of, I've been going off script, but I do have some of the questions and also some of the information that I want to share as well. So I know that we are coming today because it is really the conversation is like, what is going on? What is really up right now? And there's a lot of conversation around how are we going to explore the opportunity and the future of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. For us in the U.S., it's known as a USMCA, and then also for Canada, I'm sure known to all of you as CUSMA. So I will go back and forth on that. So before I kind of getting started and then get an opportunity to hear from the expert, since we're here, as Brendan mentioned, I lead the State Economic Development Agency. And the work that we do is all around the infrastructure, business development, but most importantly is being able to provide that trade and promote the trade opportunity for between Oregon and many of the key partners as well. Canada and Mexico are the top partners for Oregon. And then with that, Oregon plays a significant and strategic role in the USMCA framework, particularly through our strong trade relationship with Canada and Mexico. For those of you who do not know that in Oregon, we only have 2 consulate offices here based in Oregon. And one of them is a Japanese consulate. The other one is a Mexican consulate. We are very fortunate that to be able to work with the Canadian consulate in Seattle and strengthen that relationship, especially for the last couple of years. Early this year, we just hosted the semiconductor delegation who's getting to come and have a B2B meetings, have an opportunity to learn about the businesses and meet some of the companies here in Oregon and explore those partnership opportunities. I really hope that you, as you're going back to your city and also as you're going back to wherever you are in Canada, please, think about what is an opportunity that we can also offer. Oregon has a lot to offer, and we just really appreciate that opportunity throughout the years that we can also explore those. So now let's look at a little bit about the numbers that when I talk about Oregon and why we say that Canada and Mexico are really the key partners for Oregon. Just last year in 2024, Canada and Mexico accounted for over $9.6 billion of Oregon's total export. Canada at $3.3 billion and Mexico at $6.3 billion. Of course, making them the top 5 trading partners. So you might be wondering, what are those? What are the exports between the Canada and Mexico? These exports including semiconductors, machinery, transport equipment, agriculture products. I'm sure that is not new to all of you, especially if you are from Canada. We do have a lot of exchange on that, and wood products. And in all that sectors that benefit from tariff-free access to USMCA. So as I was having a conversation with our economists, and this is a conversation that I'm sure many of you actually relate to as well, there's a lot of conversation about like the uncertainty, a lot of conversation around what is really happening right now with the tariffs. The conversations at this forum that PENVAR put together, and I recently just joined PENVAR in Bellevue during the summer. I'm sure that some of you also participate as well. There's a lot of conversations that what can we do? What can we do to support our business community during this uncertainty time? And I really hope that by exploring the opportunity, the collaboration, having the conversation, being part of the forum such as today that PENVAR also convened, it's give us a pathway to think about what are the policy opportunity, what is the opportunity that we can also help the business to continue to thrive. And I really like Honorable Kisik mentioned about really, we all coming here and together for our commitment because we want our Pacific Northwest to be successful. And to do that, it's all about collaboration. So going back to tariffs, when I had a conversation with our agency economists, we talk about what are we looking at? We did some research early this year. We conducted a survey. We learned from our businesses what's really happening right now is the unpredictability and also the uncertainty that's not really giving them the opportunity to continue to make strategic decision. So we're looking at the numbers for this year. I think our data has only show up to July. The number for the Mexico and then also for Canada, it's going down. But it's still too early to show that impact because it's still a long-term impact for this trade agreement. What is going to happen next, that is what is going to impact for our Oregon exporters. So even though for the first 7 months, we have seen some declines in number, we noticed that Mexico still was still the second largest destination for by value for Oregon exporter, and Canada was still the 4th largest destination for Oregon. So this remains critical export markets for Oregon business, of course. So going back to why I'm sharing all this, because I wanted to also give an opportunity to saying that Oregon playing a really critical role, and we also really appreciate the partnership with Canada and also with Mexico, and how this conversation around the USMCA the framework, and how we're going to also support and play the role. So in order to do so, I think that the timing is right, looking ahead. As we look ahead to the next phase of the North American Economic Cooperation, the conversation this morning, as we opening this conversation around supply chain resilience, the conversation about rares, a conversation about where's an opportunity that we can come together, this conversation could not be more timely. The USMCA has been a cornerstone of trade and investment across our region, supporting jobs, innovation, and most importantly, cross-border collaboration. But as global markets evolve and new challenges emerge, from digital equity and supply chain resilience to climate policy and labor standards, so too must our approach to this critical agreement. I'm very grateful that we have two amazing people and experts who are joining us today. I'm really hope that this panel today is not just me providing the information, but opportunity and discussion to strengthen and modernize the agreement. Our two experts will help lead in shaping our thinking of a more inclusive, forward-looking trade framework that reflects our regional values and economic strength. So I don't know if they online yet. Are they online, Brendan? Oh, okay. So, well, with that, I'm just gonna go ahead and just get started. Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Brandon. Well, thanks to our modern technology. We have quite a number of folks who's also joined online, and also our panelists join us online as well. For those of you here, I know as Matt mentioned, there's many people also coming in throughout the day. I think that we have an opportunity to get to meet everybody later today and this week. I could see that Adam is here. Do we have Dr. Sands? While we're actually waiting for Dr. Christopher Sands, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce those two leaders. I just wanted to invite you, even though my tablet, well, it's not mine, but the tablet is restarting right now. But for those of you who are joining the Penvar for the first time, or for those of you who's actually tuned in online, you know that through the Hua app, you can also put in the questions, and you don't have to ask a question. My tablet's not working because it's still restarting right now. It's 34%. So I need some technical help right there. Well, the reason that I mentioned the Hua app, for those of you who are here and also online, I would like to invite you to put in your question. We want this conversation today, the panel, to be engaging, to also really help you all to think about, some of the question and think boldly. Think about like what is like how is the way that we can also help to promote our Pacific Northwest together, and what are the questions that you might be having in mind, not just need a timeline but any of the backgrounds as well. Should we get started, and then Dr. Christopher Sands can also join us later? Well, thank you, Adams, for being here. You like on many screens here across the room. We have quite a number of people staring at you. We actually have two leaders joining us on this panel who sharing their perspective, but then also providing some of the background as well. Perfect timing, Dr. Sands. Thank you for joining us. Well, while both of them cannot be here in person, I'm sure that they're going to share a few words as well. I just wanted to take this opportunity, and I'm not going to read the entire bio because I like to invite you to go to the Hua app for the agenda. We have all the bio for both of them. Dr. Christopher Sands is an adjunct lecturer, director of the Hopkins Centers for Canadian Study, and faculty co-lead for technology and innovation at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Study. He is a faculty advisor in the School of Advanced International Study, doctorate in the International Affairs program. And another leader who's joining us and sharing the perspective from the private sectors, we have Adam Holland, who served as a managing counsel, global trade and compliance at the JR Simplot company in Boise, Idaho. One of the country's 50 largest exporters. His responsibility include providing guidance to company leadership and operational teams regarding tariffs and other compliance matters. So as I mentioned, that as they sharing the information, I would like to invite you to think about what type of questions that you may have. For those of you who's here in the room, feel free to also raise your hand. We also get your question in, or you please put into the Hua app, and then we'll make sure that we have the questions as well. So with that, well, they coming back. I'm so sorry. We have some technical difficulty right here, Dr. Sands and Adam. But well, with that start, I just wanted to invite both of them. And Dr. Christopher Sands, I'd like to start with you because the topic today is really on this session is about what is the status of the joint review of the USMCA. But if you wouldn't mind, just share a little bit about some of the background of this agreement and kind of what has led to us today and where we are right now. And please feel free to also introduce yourself as well.
Oh,
We'll turn it
sure.
over to you, Dr. Sands.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Am I coming through loud and clear?
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, everybody. So I hate to say it, I'm here from Washington, and I'm here to help. No, this is the bad Washington. You don't want our help. But I could tell you a little bit about how we find ourselves in the USMCA review. The USMCA, in many ways, was a modernization and an update on the NAFTA that we're all familiar with. But it was, I think, in one way, a real upgrade, and that is that it had a review mechanism. If you remember the NAFTA, when it was put together back it was negotiated in 92, 93, and then took effect in beginning of 1994, we didn't have any provisions for digital trade. We didn't have any provisions for some of the new technology and the new industries that have emerged since then. In fact, I remember because I was a grad student at the time, I didn't even have email back then. So a lot has changed. And with the USMCA, the three countries consciously created a mechanism for upgrade. And there's a trade-off when you do that. On the one hand, you want to be able to update the agreement. You want to be able to add new features, etc. But you also want to give business some stability so that they know what they can expect from one quarter to the next. And so the compromise was a review after 6 years. And that review 6 years in has to take place by July 1st of 2026. Now, the review process has already begun in that the three governments have all solicited input. I think they all are asking for the input to come in by November the 3rd. I think they all have the same deadline. Significantly, it's the first time Mexico has ever done a solicitation for public input for a major trade agreement. And this is sort of the beginning, trying to get a sense from people, what would you do differently? What would you like to see added or tightened up or maybe dropped from the structure? If you're familiar with the operation of the USMCA, you may have noticed that every year there is a USMCA Free Trade Commission, which includes the three trade ministers. They meet just to review implementation. At some of those meetings, we've heard little bits, complaints about this and that from the operation of the agreement, and the three trade ministers sort of resolved to try to work on that behind the scenes in the subsequent year. What makes the joint review different is that it is about how to improve the operation of the agreement with additions, changes, and other adjustments to the rules. We know a little bit about this process, but I should say at the outset that we've never been through it before. This is the first time North America's had a review like that. So I'll start with what we know. In addition to the solicitation of input, the USMCA text itself includes some guidance as to what can be changed without going back to Congress. And the major thing within that is the rule of origin. And the rule of origin for almost everything is up at 65%, but it's 75% for automotive. What counts and doesn't count towards that amount is the subject of the rule of origin. And unlike the European Union or other trade agreements where simply being on the territory makes you eligible for tariff-free status, every business, and those of you who are in business know this, every business and every product has to justify its tariff-free treatment by showing that it has met the appropriate rule of origin. That can be changed by the three governments in the course of the next review. One thing that I'm watching very carefully is whether the governments will try to do national set-asides within the context of the rule of origin. So, for example, a 75% rule of origin that says 75% of the content must come from Canada, the US, and Mexico could be amended to say, we want 50% of that to come from the United States alone. This is the kind of thing we would expect from the Trump administration, trying to bring more manufacturing and other industries into the United States. But if you have anything more complicated than, say, a 2 or 3 step supply chain, you'll know just how costly it is for business to be able to make those adjustments. It's hard to make them on the dime. You sign a contract with a supplier, which has his own supplier, has their own supplier. It becomes quite a complicated web. And making adjustments to the supply chain are one of the big areas of disruption, maybe improvement, but in the short-term disruption that we can expect from this agreement. Similarly, we have temporary entry provisions. These are the ones that allow you to get a NAFTA or a TN visa. I think we now call it USMCA visa. Well, do we? No, we call it a TN visa in the US. Mexico and Canada both have named it after the agreement, so it's a CUSMA visa for Canadians and a TMEC visa for Mexicans. But this allows you to do temporary entry, everything from executives who are intercompany transferees to individuals who want to gain the right to work without changing their citizenship in one of the other countries on a list of professions. This summer, we saw the definitions for these professions tightened up so that there was a feeling there had been some abuse of some categories, particularly a category of economist. I know thinking about abusing economists is not something anybody wants to contemplate this early in the morning, but especially those of us who've done too many economics classes, no, please don't abuse us. Those categories are subject to amendment and change without going back to Congress as well. And one of the areas that I've been looking at possibly being a positive area would be, for example, taking some of the engineers who specialize in critical minerals and critical minerals processing, a big priority for Canada and the US, and putting them on the list so that they have the ability to go to site, to see how to set up an operation and then move on to the next one. I think we have a very important pool of talent in this area, and we ought to make sure that they're as mobile as possible. There are other areas that we've also talked about. The North American Leader Summits have talked about creating a student visa so that students have the ability to have a sort of fast track to study in each other's countries in support of, in the long run, having North America be tighter. That's a pretty positive idea and could actually be an improvement. Also doesn't have to go back to Congress. I'm going to end there because I want it to be more of a conversation, but I will say the reason I keep mentioning Congress is that a year ago, we're doing a Pinware conversation, and one of the questions was, we don't have to worry too much about the review because in order to get through the review, the administration must get congressional approval, sort of like a trade negotiating authority. That was sort of the fail-safe. Everyone said, well, worst comes to worst, Congress will put the brakes on any really wild ideas. But I don't think Congress is going to have much of a role, unfortunately, here. There's too much of the agreement that is amendable from within its own text. And so Congress may be on the outside looking in, which is unfortunate. Something I'd like to see them be more assertive on. But we can't count on them to save us, at least not those of us who are Americans. We're going to have to really invest in it. And that's why I emphasize the importance of putting some ideas out there, giving the negotiators some encouragement for something positive to make USMCA work better.
Thank you, Dr. Sands. I might have to go back to the comment that you make about the TN visa because there's a questions coming up. But before we get there, Adam, we would like to hear from you from the private sector perspective on the USMCA, or known as a CUSMA negotiation, and the impact on the Pacific Northwest region.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay, Sophorn?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Holland. Like Sophorn said, I serve as the JR Simplot Company's Global Trade Counsel. We're based out of Boise, Idaho. If you've ever, I don't know if you've been here. Some of you I know, I heard that we're actually coming into town from Idaho, so I'm sure that you've heard of us. We do French fries and fertilizer. Those are the products that we do. And if you have other products that start with F, we probably can do those as well. Those are the ones where we started. We do French fries. For those that are not familiar with us, we sell French fries to McDonald's, Wendy's, Arby's, Outback Steakhouse, Red Robin. A good chunk of the French fries that you've eaten over the years have come from one of our plants. We do a significant amount of business in the Pacific Northwest region for sure. Along with that, we have a very large French fry processing plant in Manitoba, just west of Winnipeg, where we go and we will produce a significant amount of French fries, and we ship them. We supply a lot of our customers throughout the eastern seaboard of the United States. So we are very much committed on the food side of the business to the northern border. As far as the other way going northbound, we produce fertilizer, and specifically phosphate fertilizer. Phosphate fertilizer is one of the three key ingredients that you need, three key nutrients that you need to grow any sort of a crop, which is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And potassium sometimes is called potash. And what's interesting about that part of our business is that it's not just our company that is so reliant on this. It's the entire agricultural industry. It's all of the farmers. You need all three. And the United States can produce nitrogen. It can produce some nitrogen. It can produce some phosphate as well, but not potash. And so we import a lot of potash from Canada, and Canada is the opposite way. So the trade is very, very important to America's and Canadian farmers. So the entire agricultural industry in the northern border is very reliant on international trade to be successful. And of course, as a region, we export a lot of our product abroad. Even though Simplot ships about $2 billion worth of merchandise every year internationally, a large portion of that is across the northern border. We do business in 76 countries. We are touching our supply chains. Either we're buying from or selling to every continent, including Australia, except for Antarctica. We have a very large international supply chain, but the northern border is very, very important. And also that relationship between Canada and the United States is very important for us, because we are, as Sophorn said in the introduction, Simplot is one of the larger exporters out of the United States. We have quite a bit of product that leaves the United States just outside of going out through Tacoma. And then we also import urea, that nitrogen aspect of it, in through Portland, not far from where all of you are sitting. So again, international trade is very, very important for us, and that border is very, very important to us. And to answer the question that was posed, what does the private sector want? And I think that we had a meeting a few weeks ago or a few days ago with the agriculture minister of Manitoba. And one of the questions that was posed is, what does everyone want? And you had about 25 different companies in there. And I think the overriding comment from everyone in there was, do no harm. I think everyone, the private sector wants predictability. We want certainty. I think the one piece that's been kind of a sticking point is market access. And for our company, we have had market access. There's really the border for us in our company is very, very thin. We're able to move potatoes northbound and southbound, depending on which region has had a better growing season, rather well. There are hiccups from time to time, and I think certainly some of our comments may have to do with that we want to submit to as part of this process have to do with the phytosanitary portions of the agreement. There are nematodes, there's blight issues, and certainly it's important to the government that both governments have the ability to go into do inspections to make sure that those issues don't go and spread across the border any more than they do. Now that said, making sure that those inspection agencies, that they're well funded, that they're well staffed, those are very important to us as a company as well. And so that's kind of the other piece that I'd like to talk about as far as what does private industry want? I think that the comments that we've seen in the past really kind of fall into two categories. One is, how can we make it's working already. The USMCA is working already. It's very effective. That border is one of the, if you're thinking about administratively burdensome borders, it's not. It's actually a very light administratively burdensome place. So we do business in India, we do business in Argentina. I can tell you those borders are very, very difficult to go and to move product across. And so being able to go into being able to leverage this very integrated economy between the United States and Canada is very, very valuable and very, very important to our company and to farmers and all of our stakeholders that we have as a company. And so that's kind of the first piece is that, what kind of, what does industry want? And of course, the question is do no harm. And how can we make it even better, right? How can we try to facilitate and move and make that border even more productive than it is right now? How can we make sure that things are being funded properly by the government so that those inspections can happen and that, so these trucks don't get stopped at the border and get delayed? The second thing is, how can we try to resolve these negotiations quickly? I think that's another question that that I have, and what my company is very interested in. Because we rely so much on that border, how can we try to minimize disruption due to these negotiations? We've talked about market access, and it's no secret as far as what the United States is interested in. It's interested in using, and by United States I mean the government, of course, is interested in kind of using its negotiating power here to go to gain additional market access. I think we saw that there were additional tariffs put in place on softwood lumber from Canada today. There's a discussion around the Canadian dairy industry that's been going on, and so these are kind of sticking points that I think that the U.S. administration is looking at gaining additional market access for, and of course the Canadian government and the Canadian industries for their portion have very good reasons to try to protect those industries, subsidies and otherwise. And so, so the important thing here, I think, is kind of looking at the other bucket. Where can we as a group of companies and ministers here at Pinmore, what can we do to help that process and try to facilitate things and make them resolved sooner than later? So, I think part of this is looking at, so it's clear what the United States wants. But that doesn't necessarily mean that this is a lose-lose situation for Canada. There may be opportunities for Canada to obtain benefits from the United States as a give and a take as part of these negotiations. I noticed that I saw in the Wall Street Journal just in the last week that Prime Minister Carney was talking about the Keystone Pipeline again, and that might be something that Canada might be interested in obtaining as a concession from the United States. I think that's the part that even though we have quite a few of provincial and state leadership here within the room, if you're looking at how can we help our federal governments try to come to the table armed with information that will help them to resolve these issues quickly, I think that's an important function that people in the room can do. And how you do that, of course, is by submitting comments, communicating through Pinmore and through other industry groups that you're members of. What are things what are challenges that you've run into in the United States, whether it's market access or otherwise, that you have been challenged with as a Canadian company, or Canadian provincial leadership. So those are things those are kind of the two buckets. How can we try to make the border more efficient, more productive, and how can we go and arm the national governments with information so that they can do that horse trading in a way that makes it so that it's not necessarily a lose-lose, that there might be a win in it as well. And helps to facilitate it and make it go off more quickly. And anyway, those are kind of my main points. Chris?
I was just going to add to that because I think those are all excellent points. Two things. One is I think if you're having a good experience, we're not used to defending Canada-US relations or Canada-US trade, but if things are working well for you, if you really value the fact that your supply chain crosses the border in a significant way, I think it's important to share that as well. I'm not going to, I don't want to impugn anyone, but we have a government of people who do finance and real estate. Those are important sectors of the economy. That's where their experience comes from. But manufacturing, consumer products, a whole range of things that you will all be familiar with, that may be not resonating as much in this U.S. administration. So if there's something positive, if there's something that's working and you don't want it to change, I think that's important to share as well. One follow-on to that, which I think is an area that we should consider, and it's been on PNWR's agenda for a long time. I know Matt Morrison is here. I could see Mike Cup in the video, so I know he's here. You all know this topic really well, and that is mutual recognition on regulatory standards. One of the things that we've always sort of thought about is how do we align our regulations so that we could create a single market between US, Canada, and Mexico, where you sort of test once and then provide approvals for all three countries. The last before Mark Carney came into power, he had, as a minister, Anita Anand, who's now the foreign minister, serving as his president of the Treasury Board. And she tried to kindle talks with the U.S. on something called mutual recognition, where you don't try to have all the same regulations, but you recognize that however the measurements differ in each country, they're trying to achieve fundamentally the same thing. So the revolution that concept could mean for us in North America is that you could go to your regular regulator, whether it's federal or state. You get that sign off. This is safe. This is good, ready to sell. And then you have an approval that works across all 500 million people here in North America. That's a big market with a very simple regulatory process with the regulators that you know already. Maybe know and hate, but still, they're the ones you know. I think something like that is a kind of big idea that could make USMCA so much more successful. And so I've given you sort of two pictures. One, defend what's working, but also let's dream a little bigger about what we could ask the governments to do that might really open up the economy and cut cost. No matter what we do, we're competing with China. We're going to be competing with some really tough economies around the world, and in a very positive way. We want to make sure that we're as efficient as we can be. And cutting red tape, something this administration's talked a lot about, can be done smartly by leaning on each other's regulatory systems where they're good enough.
And I'll just add on to that one more topic, which is just how important it is that the two countries resolve these issues quickly. There are far more things that we have as a region, we've taken so many steps to try to align ourselves, and we are aligned as far as our shared histories, our shared values that we have. Right, and we stand against the same things. We stand against forced labor. We still stand against totalitarianism across the world. We stand, for democracy, right? And so, it can, I certainly have sympathy for my Canadian friends who may feel like they've been kind of backstabbed here through this process. That everything's working well. Why do we need to go and have even have these discussions? But like Chris said, there are opportunities certainly to go and to improve. And as participants in that process, you have the opportunity to help us to streamline that so that we can move on and tackle these issues that we stand together on.
Adam and Dr. Sand, thank you so much for some of the comments and also sharing the perspective and some of opportunity as well. Dr. Sand, I just wanted to kind of go back a little bit because Adam mentioned about kind of from the business perspective, what the private sector is looking for, like the predictabilities and also the market access, stabilities, all of those. Now, we know that, so we just wanted to kind of hear a little bit from your knowledge and experience. Let's say without this agreement, what are some of the impact businesses would see from tariff exposure to red tape? How about the general public? Any impacts to all of us as a general public?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think Adam, being more on the sort of tip of the spear of the business community, probably has his own insight on this. I'm just an academic in an ivory tower and all of that, but I do talk to people, so I can talk a little bit about it. One of the first big impacts that we have is trying to get a kind of, I'll call it a truce of North America or a peace of North America, because it has been very disruptive for business, whatever you think of the individual cases, to have the economy hit by tariffs by tweet or by Truth, if it's on Truth Social. That creates uncertainty for sure, that you don't know whether you're going to be facing big or small tariffs. And the island of good news in all of that last 8 months has been that if you've been USMCA compliant, that is to say, you meet the rule of origin, you have been, in most, not all cases, you've been exempted from some of these tariffs. So it's the shelter of predictability that has been helpful. But with the review, I think a lot of businesses have said, well, it's stable for now, but I'm not sure how confident I am it's going to stay stable, particularly at times when the governments were getting along. What happens when that happens? Well, first, we see all sorts of strange demand patterns. We've seen companies trying to stock up, and particularly, I was reading this morning in the Wall Street Journal, companies that were stocking up on softwood lumber, trying to get ahead of any potential softwood lumber tariffs, some of which will start in a couple of weeks. They were just stockpiling because they wanted to get the goods ahead of time and just having them sitting on the lot so they wouldn't have to pay the tariff just in case. Some of these tariffs have come on and then been gone in a week. Some of them have lasted for months. And so the USMCA provides a certain amount of predictability. And when you don't know what's happening, you don't invest. And yes, there's a lot of money in North America. It's going into things like cryptocurrencies, and it's going into the markets, and it's there, but it's not going into business inward investment that is going to create more efficient, more competitive plants. Why? Because people don't know what the risk is. How do you make an investment if you don't know what your risk factor is or whether your market is still going to be accessible? So creating stability as much as getting this resolved quickly, I think, would be great. And the USMCA has been really the island of sanity in all of this so far. So far, it has been a great shield for a lot of parts of business, but it's still, we're operating in such an uncertain area. Now, let me go one step further. We know, and we know this from the rhetoric that we're hearing from Washington, D.C. here, but also if you read some of what Robert Lighthizer, the former U.S. Trade Representative, has written, what others around the president have written, their big focus in many ways is China, not North America. China and the competition from China, some of which they feel is fundamentally unfair. And many of us in the United States feel like we're, really facing unfair pressure from China and from Chinese overproduction that's flooding the market at below cost. That's a serious concern. China was one of our top 3 trading partners. It still is, but Canada and Mexico are the top 2 for the United States. How a peace for North America, one where we just stop fighting with each other on trade, but try to focus on how we make sure that China isn't flooding, if it can't get into the U.S., Canada with cheap products that then find their way back into the U.S. supply chain and vice versa. That's a really critical issue, and sort of solving things among ourselves would make a big difference. As we go through that, you're going to see price inflation. Because you're going to see the prices of a lot of things go up because of adding tariffs or trying to eschew Chinese product. And so in that environment with a lot of cost pressure, families and others are going to see prices going up. They're going to be worried about what they're buying, whether it'll still be available on the shelves. That's an area where I think if we can use the USMCA to create some stability and predictability and keep costs under control by ending some of these random tariffs, that would be a net win for everyone. And not to be political, but I know we have a lot of elected officials in the room. If we could do that in a way that sets the stage for midterm elections at the end of next year, wouldn't that be nice? We'd be able to have maybe a reason to go to the ballot box to vote for someone, not just against someone. But
yeah, also, I'll just add on to that as well. As we're talking about the uncertainty, unpredictability, and the caution, I think it's very important that you go and find a good advisor who can kind of make sure that at the very least, while there is this unpredictability, that at least you're informed about the unpredictability, and then that you have kind of an idea of what to expect. President Trump has talked about, as his banner is "Make America Great Again." I think the one thing that he certainly has made great is trade attorneys. We are, people, you don't want to go talk to your tax advisor unless there's something to talk to your tax advisor about. But right now, there's something to talk to your trade attorney about. So make sure that you go and find a good advisor to walk you through these tariffs. Walk you through what to expect, what not to expect, what is their opinion on things. These things can really help. and make good informed decisions as far as how to deal with the uncertainty that's in front of you. Sophorn and Matt and Brandon, they all have my contact information. If you'd like, and you, of course, you can find me through the app. But if you need any guidance on that, I'm more than happy to go into provide some free advice. And if it turns into something more significant, I can refer you over to somebody that can really help you out on a professional basis. But make sure that you do have some strong advisors to help guide you through this.
Thank you, Adam. We do have a couple questions from the app, but I just wanted to, I know you both spoke a little bit about this, but I wanted to be really specific and I wanted to understand, and for our audience and participants who's here in the room, as well as who join us online, can you share a little bit more? What do you think the U.S. is trying to get out of the review? And how about Canada and Mexico?
Chris, I think that you're in a better position than I am to answer that one.
All right, I'll do my best. What does the U.S. want to get out of it? This was an agreement which the USMCA, which was negotiated by the first Trump administration, and at the time, I think, was not only widely praised by the administration itself, but also by Congress. This is a kind of interesting historical observation, but there were bigger and more bipartisan majorities in the House and Senate in the Congress who supported the implementing legislation for the USMCA than we had seen for the Uruguay round of the WTO, the NAFTA, or even the Canada-US Free Trade Agreement before that. There was a broad sense that US trade policy needed to focus on not creating such rules liberalization for businesses that they could offshore, but so that they could reshore and bring work back, and that we had created a kind of trade regime that worked well for some Americans, but had not done a great job for a lot of American workers. And in the process, whole industries had been sort of shipped overseas where we were no longer self-reliant. At the same time, we had geostrategic priorities, things like critical minerals development, where we were very vulnerable. Critical minerals are important, of course, to consumer electronics. They're important to automobiles. They're important to a range of products, but they're also important to military weaponry. And in an unstable time, the fact that the vast majority of critical minerals processing was being done by China was a red flag for the administration. We needed a plan to be able to build those industries that we had not had at that level here in North America and do so as quickly as possible. And those kind of broad, big picture goals, I think, were what led us to the agreement that we had. Now that the administration is back, they're looking to see if they can't move in the same direction, but be more effective and maybe deal with some of the smaller, some of the issues that weren't able to be resolved. I'll give you an example. There is a section of the agreement, which is Article 3210. It is the article that says no country is of the three should have negotiations with non-market economies without notifying the others. This was aimed primarily at China, which the US designates as a non-market economy. We didn't want each of the countries having their own trade agreements with China. The original language from the Trump administration back when this was negotiated was, if you try to negotiate a trade agreement with a non-market economy, we kick you out of USMCA. And Justin Trudeau and the Canadians softened that to a notification requirement, feeling that some conversations might be allowed. I wouldn't be surprised to see that come back and say, look, if you're going to try and do a trade agreement with China, then we don't want you in our inner circle of trade partners. Things like that, I think that this administration is going to focus on. They are very concerned about primary products, steel, aluminum, natural resource products, and they're also concerned with jobs. The good news is we're reaching a point where we have actually labor shortages, not especially among some of the skilled labor categories and trades. And so transitionally, it's very beneficial for us to have access to Canadian skilled labor and some Mexican skilled labor, as long as everyone's playing by the rules. So I think the goal here is to take a good agreement and make it even better, serving some of the interest in moving as much activity back to the United States as possible. But now that sounds very positive. I'll give you the caveat, because I can't leave you out with just good news. I had the chance, and I know Matt Morrison was there with me, to attend a meeting in Toronto last week, and Howard Lutnick joined us remotely, the Secretary of Commerce. And what he said was, I think Matt can correct me, it was about as blunt as this: Canada for a long time has been able to make cars, and the US makes cars, and the US wants to make more cars, and Canada may want to make cars, but in the long run, we're going to make cars in the United States, and Canada's going to have to find something else to do because it's not going to be making cars anymore. Maybe parts, but that's it. That's about as predatory a kind of comment you could have expected out of US government, when Canada's role in our auto industry dates back to the very beginning of the auto industry, back then because Canada was in the British Imperial Trading Preference System and was our doorway to huge international markets. It was also where US auto companies helped to arm the Allies during World War I and World War II before the US entry into the war, and became our well-oiled military production machine for when we entered the war, both wars later on. So it put a bit of a chill through my Michigander Motown kid spine to hear that the US was taking that attitude about the auto sector. At its worst, I think that's where the administration may end up, which is being so predatory that its goal for the USMCA negotiations is simply to take back, in their sense, as many parts of the production value chain into the United States as possible. I think it'd be unfortunate, but that's why I think input is important, talking about what's working and what's not working. We may have to save what has up till now been one of the most equitable and I think very positive sources of US soft power, because we've treated our allies with respect and we've welcomed them back. We've welcomed them to participate in our economy as long as they play by a set of rules that we negotiate together. That's really the principle behind all our trade agreements. It's something that I hope we can sustain, but I'm not sure everybody in the administration's on that same page.
Yeah, it is disappointing to hear that they'd be going and trying to be that aggressive with Canada. If you're thinking about where jobs have gone, of course, President Trump, his America First policy is based on the idea that you've had this middle class languish in the United States. Where kind of you have the Rust Belt, and you have all of these people that are hourly workers that just have not seen their salaries, their hourly wages keep up with inflation, especially over time, right? You've seen the tech industry, the huge booms, and but your average American who's a working class, it has not paid off for them. I think that in that situation, they're looking to certainly make their situation better, but they may also be kind of looking for someone to blame, right? And anybody and they can point fingers anywhere they can, right? So, and of course you can say, well, Canada has stolen the automotive industry. Well, maybe, right? And I have the same response, Chris. Maybe Mexico has. Ross Perot back in the 90s said that there'd be a huge sucking of jobs, going south, right? But the reality is that the majority of those jobs have not gone to Mexico or to Canada. They have gone to state-owned enterprises over in China, primarily, companies that will never go out of business because they're owned by the Chinese government, and they will always continue to operate even at a loss until everybody else's businesses have gone out of business, and then they can raise prices. They've done that with the chemical industries. So if you're a farmer in the United States or Canada, you are completely reliant on Chinese chemical industry to go and to obtain herbicides, pesticides, crop protection products. That's the only place in the world. There's some in India, but they've really put corner the market on that for that. So if they really wanted to go and to make life hard on our crop industry, crop agricultural industries, they could just say, sorry, there's no more chemicals coming from us to produce those products, and you see a reduction in farming output here in North America. So anyway, that's really the core of the core of where those are. So you have these people that where has that profitability gone? And again, it's not within North America. These are issues that have occurred outside of North America, and it's very important for us as the United States, Canada, Mexico to get through these negotiations so that we can continue to focus on the issues that affect us jointly. And at the core of this issue is not an issue between the three of us. The core of the issue where we have these middle class people whose hourly wages have
Adam and Dr. Sands. We do have a few questions actually coming through the app. I'm just going to combine 3 questions because I apologize. And it's Adam. Oh, okay. Adam's here. So one of the question is, in July, the U.S. ambassador said they were hopeful about making a trade deal announcement by August. Do you see a move towards bilateral agreements instead of trilateral agreement? Now I'm going to build on those questions and then as you sharing your comment, because there's a couple questions really similar and build on that. What outcomes are possible or likely on July 1st in 2026? And what happens if no agreement happen on July 2026?
Okay, well, let me jump in with that, and Adam, I encourage you to follow in. So each government in the review, answering the second question first, has to come to one of 3 decisions. They can either decide to withdraw from the USMCA, giving 6 months notice. That's pretty severe. So far, no sign that any of the countries are ready to do that. They could also renew the USMCA. And if they choose to renew it, we start the 16-year clock again. Right now, the agreement will expire in 10 years.
Sorry, everyone.
Yes?
Dr. Christopher Sands, we are losing you here.
Oh, no.
The in
Oh, no.
person, but I don't know if the online.
Yeah, it may be an issue there in Portland because I've been able to hear you perfectly, Chris.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, and it looks like Pinner's frozen to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
we'll wait until the technical issues have been resolved.
but yes, trying not to be partisan, just trying to give people a sense of the stakes, because I know there are a lot of people who are fans of the administration, just worried about all the stress. So
Sure.
Hopefully that will carry through.
Okay, looks like they can hear us. Yeah, they can hear online just fine. I think we probably just should wait until we can get everyone.
Yeah, until we get the room back.
Although your partisanship is showing there, Chris. Your Canadian flags keep popping out of your coat there.
I was just at an event and I had the little tabletop flags, so I had to take them out. I realized they were showing. It was funny, was that with the commander of the Canadian Army, and really impressive. So yeah, it's interesting because he almost sounded like a business guy. They're going to get to 2%. He's got a flood of cash coming and he's trying to make smart decisions. And, I'm sure it's like that for anybody who wins the lottery. How do I make the best decision possible? And everybody, your new friend, wanting to sell you X, Y, or Z. So he's a good problem to have, but he's feeling a little overwhelmed after so many years of kind of facing a drought of resources. So
yeah, I believe it.
Yeah, but a good guy.
Yeah, it looks like we might be getting them back.
Okay,
Matt Morrison, is that you? I can see you.
Why don't you finish your
Trying
3
to
points?
answer some of the question for you, respond for you. So, all right.
So I'll just quickly finish that point. The 3 things you can do is you can agree to withdraw, you could renew the agreement and reset the clock, or the third option is that each of the 3 governments has the option to say, we're not ready yet to renew, but we aren't withdrawing. That's the middle ground option. But what that means is that every year we have a joint review. So what's happening in 26 would then happen in 27 and 28 and 29 until all 3 countries agree to renew the agreement, which then resets the 16-year clock with a review after 6 years. I suspect that the Trump administration will end up with that third option, not ready to renew fully, but open to maintaining the agreement for the remaining 10 years of its operation. That allows the Trump administration to ask for new concessions from Canada and Mexico every year. I think it's not great for business because it's going to be very destabilizing. You won't know what's coming next. It may also make Canada and Mexico reluctant to put big concessions on the table, knowing they're going to only have to be asked to give more big concessions next year. So I think it's a very negative dynamic. But I also think Canada and Mexico will choose to stay in the negotiation in that situation because they have 10 years more of the USMCA, and they may have to make concessions every year, but they will hope that there will be an administration in the future that will be willing to renew the agreement. And so they won't want to throw that chance away that we could keep the stability just because of the fact that we'd be stuck in annual negotiations. But going to something that we said earlier, this is why it's so important to engage in this process and to put some things on the table, because we may be doing this for the remainder of the administration, and making sure your voice is heard has never been more important.
Thank you. Counselor, would you like to ask the question again, since our panelist is back, and we can take one question from the audience here?
All right, I was just asking if there was any insight into where softwood lumber tariffs would be landing. That's a big deal in my province. Thanks.
Oh, Adam, I think that I have to take this one too, don't I?
We don't do a lot of softwood lumber on my side, so I think that between the two of us, you're probably the better option.
Well, unfortunately, I don't have a great sense of good news. The president has talked about putting those softwood lumber duties on effective, I think it's November the 1st. There were some tariffs that were coming in on the that were coming in tomorrow, but I think this one is part of the batch that comes in November 1st. And he was talking about a level that could be between 10 and 25%. I'm afraid we're going to face that tariff, at least in the first instance, but he's also affecting tariffs on cabinetry and other products. The reason I mentioned it earlier is that we're actually in a terrible situation in the lumber market writ large, even though I know we heard the announcement of a big industry merger. Part of the reason for that merger is just the prices have been soft, and home starts have been low. And there are a lot of companies that have stockpiled lumber just so that they can ride out what they hope will be a temporary period. So I'm very pessimistic that we're heading into a worse situation for softwood lumber in the near term.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing the response on that. We are actually reaching the time. I just wanted to end by also ask a little bit about the process. So we talk about the public comment. I think that it would be helpful for the audience and participants here to learn a little bit more from you both. Like, what is the process, and when is it the deadline again for submitting this comment? And is the deadline the same for the US and Canada, or is it a different deadline?
I can quickly answer that it is the same deadline. It's November the 3rd. So coming up, some of you will know Halloween is a Friday. And so if you get your ideas together from Halloween, that'll be the scary thing. And then you can submit them by that date. And in case you're wondering, I know Adam suggested getting, good help. The rules are you can submit to the US, certainly from any country. So you could submit as a Canadian to the US negotiating. So we're very open about these things, and you don't have to have a lawyer to submit. There's a portal that's been set up by the Department of Commerce to collect your ideas. It's a Federal Register notice. Canada has something similar. I'm not as familiar with the Mexican process, but you can put in your comments, and to show you that it's relatively easy. We're having a USMCA review challenge here at Johns Hopkins and with some of the other schools, where we're encouraging our students to come up with ideas and submit a letter with their idea for making USMCA better. It costs nothing, and it's their chance to put some marker down for the future. It's one of the things I think, if I can opine slightly, it's really important for us to do, and for those of you who are in the room to try to do, which is to really engage the younger audience, the millennials and Generation Z, and even younger people in your company and in your communities. Because unlike, well, I won't speak for Adam. I'll speak for myself. We grew up before there was free trade in North America. We grew up with it. Our careers were changed by it. And so, but the younger generation's always taken that stability and that relationship between the US and Canada on trade almost for granted. I know we've been talking about softwood lumber as a dispute for a long time, but there's certain elements that they've just assumed would always be there. And they're suddenly facing at a time of economic stress, where they're trying to buy a house, where they're trying to start a family, where they're trying to plan their future careers, the uncertainty that USMCA is being renegotiated. I think it's really important for them to engage on this intellectually, to think about what it takes to make this economy as prosperous and competitive as it has been, and to see how fragile it is as well, and how we can do a lot of damage if we're not careful to keep borders open for legitimate trade. And I know it's always easy to talk about the future, but I think it's really important for us to get young people thinking about this before it's too late.
The other thing I'll just add to that is that if there are things that are more sensitive that you don't want that your name or the name of your company or a group to be part of, you can obviously go and submit your comments, combine them with others through an industry association like Quinwar. You can go and we can submit them, and if they are, if there are touchy or sensitive aspects of it, that's a good way to kind of get your point out there without going and while doing so on an anonymous basis.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Well, we are running out of time. I just want to say thank you to Dr. Christopher Sands and Adam Holland for joining us, even though we miss you here in the room. We miss you here in Portland and Oregon. Hope that you can come and join us next time. So I'd like to invite everybody to thank our panelists for their insight, for being able to join us, their experience.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting us.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Great working with you, Adam.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you too, Chris.
With that, we'll turn it back to you, Brendan.